Matt, how will two-factor authentication help agencies become more secure?
Well, one of the biggest threats for agencies is the people using the systems. And so when you look at how people have accessed systems for years, it's username and password. And the problem with username and password is we're human beings. We can only remember so many things. And so when you look at the statistics of passwords, most people use the same passwords with slight derivations. So your agency password may be the exact same thing you use for your Hotmail. Maybe you'll put an exclamation mark at the end of it or a dollar sign or something different. But in general, people use the same, four-ish passwords with slight derivations. And so while you're relying on that, it's not secure. And so you need to add another factor, something you have. So that's something you know. A CAC or PIV card adds something you have so that you can't access the system unless you are pushing the card in. One of the interesting things about those is that you always got to make sure that they're not always people like to attach them to their waist. They stand up to leave their computer and they pull their computer with them. So we can make the agency more secure, but we got to make sure we keep the desktop safe as well and people stop pulling them off.
When you look at those CAC cards and those PIV cards, where does that technology excel?
So it excels from scalability. So the ability, if you have 100,000 people, if you look at an agency like the IRS with 100,000 people, the scalability, you can very easily go from 100 employees to 100,000 employees. The technology easily expands and contracts. And so when you look at the size of the federal government and the size of the military, you're getting into the millions. And so you need technologies that can expand and cover millions of people. And that is where that type of technology works well.
And on the flip side, where can it improve?
So it can improve. One of the fundamental problems with the cards is the physical issuance. To get these cards, you have to go in, you have to get your picture taken, you have to put it into different systems to authenticate it. And so if you have employees living in Iowa and maybe your office is in DC, physically getting the card to that person can be a challenge. And so while it's good technically to scale to large amounts of people, the actual physical giving of the card is a huge challenge and a huge cost. So when you look, a lot of federal agencies will scope out and say it'll cost me $7 per card, but they forget to factor in the FedEx costs to mail the card, or you have to fly the employee in to get his picture taken, and that's where the cost estimates for CAC and PIV cards never hit where they're supposed to be.
For agencies that have lagged in the past on implementing two-factor authentication, what have been some of their challenges?
So obviously the issuance, but also some of the older IT in the background. So CAC and PIV cards do require some level of modern IT infrastructure on the back end to work. So it's not just authenticating to your desktop. You want to be able to make sure that if you're in HR, you can access the HR apps. If you're in sales, you can access the sales apps. So the actual applications on the back end need to be enabled and need to be configured to interact. And that can be complicated because when you look at some of these agencies, they have hundreds or thousands of applications.
What's the future of smart cards in government?
So the future of smart cards, hopefully, is next to nothing. The future of smart identity is going to be hopefully everywhere. And I say that meaning you are seeing, and within RSA we do that, we're putting your identity on your phone, right? So the ability, so instead of having a card hanging around your hip or your neck, it's your phone, because everybody has a phone today. And if you lose your phone, you're down at the store the same day to get a new one. And so by putting your identity on your phone, and you're seeing it with a lot of the pay, go in to buy a coffee and you can pay with your phone. The same concept. But it's also, when I talked about this, the cost of issuance. Well, if you have 100,000 employees, instead of sending out 100,000 cards, you can do a software push to 100,000 phones instantaneously. You're able to instantaneously give somebody their new identity. And so the future of cards, hopefully, is minimal. The future of identities will become much larger, but they're going to be on your device. And there's so many more things that we can do with your identity, from a thumbprint, a picture of your face, your voice activation. We can take the security associated with two-factor authentication and take it to a whole new level.
I'd like to thank my guest today, Matt McCormick, Chief Technology Officer of RSA's Global Public Sector. For Federal News Radio, I'm Jason Fornicola.